Mike, I've got the same question related to Howie. I'm finding in university hockey, we had COVID, so graduate players came back. Now you might have had 23 people. Now you got 28 people. And I don't know what UND does. They might carry over 30 people for a season. Now, how many players, Mike, did you have? Like with that number of imports, were you carrying 25 to 30 or paying salaries that everybody wants to play and they can't? So, Mike, your situation.
No, and that's one of the stickier things in my construct is that my GM, and I believe in depth, and my GM does as well. But so our depth typically comes from our German players. So he'll sign where I got our 9 imports, and he'll sign another, we've got, what would it be, 16, 17 Germans. But then he just tosses it on my lap. And I've got, I'm the guy telling, I'm healthy scratching guys. I'm telling who's getting bag skated, who's in, who's out. And then I've got to manage the egos and the hurt feelings. And it's just the way it is, right? But so this year, it being an exception to the rule, because we did have Champions League and we did take on some extra contracts, which stretches the budget, which isn't normal. Because even for us, our main sponsor, our owner is Volkswagen. And just put it in perspective how big soccer is over in Germany. Volkswagen sponsors the soccer team, puts in 104 million euros per year. That's in their yearly operating budget. Okay. They stick 6.5 into hockey, which puts us makes us pretty healthy on the whole landscape of German clubs. But so once you get into that, we carry a couple extras, 3. I think that in the college game, it's much more prevalent, Mark. Hey, like in the States, it's the same way. In Canada, it's the same way, because you need that depth. You've got your student athletes. For us, it's how much will your budget allow? Never mind me having to manage the egos and the feelings and everything. So the have teams, yeah, they've got real depth. The have not teams, no. They hope they stay healthy throughout the whole season.
Mark, that's what I wanted. I wanted to connect the two because they're the same. How many bodies do you have on your team that could play for you in a season? How many red shirts in addition to that? Go ahead.
We had 25 this year, 3 goaltenders, 22 players. Everybody played. Typically, we were short on D, so they all played this year. We didn't have one guy redshirt this year. We had a number of injuries. We had a number of guys go down for lengthy periods of time. But typically, we want to be 8-9 defensemen, which sounds like a lot. But as you guys know, D-men get nicked up frequently. So those are the guys you need extra. And then we'll be 15-ish forwards. Try not to go over 15, maybe 16. And then 3 goaltenders. So it's different because it's not like I can get a guy at intramurals to come play on a weekend for short. So you got to carry enough, but there is a magic number of how many is too many too. Like if you have 17 forwards, 10 defense, it's not going to be an enjoyable year. It's going to be a tough year for everybody. So we want to be in that 26, 27 man roster probably ish. That's probably the magic number. So you're kind of 8 or 9 D, 5 lines and 3 goaltenders, which still is not great, but you can't bring affiliates up. You can't trade guys, so you are what you are when you start the year. So,
okay, Timmy, speaker
you're
Tim.
muted. Oh.
Your speaker
you're
Tim.
Muted, Tim.
Yeah. Sorry, that was my experience at UFC too. We kind of aimed at, 8 and 15 and 3. Seemed like a good mix for those exact reasons. My main point was it's a lot trickier on the female side because the social element on in the female game, in a good way, is but also detrimental ways, is so large that the more people you have sitting out, the more difficult it becomes to juggle. Especially if you've got a pretty sizable skill difference, maybe not from top to bottom, but in your say your bottom 6 forwards and your one or two or three, whatever you have sitting out, if there's a sizable skill difference and you're in a really competitive environment, it gets really tricky on the female side to keep an even keel on the, on the health, the psychological health of the team, because they all feel for each other so much. So it's a lot trickier. And generally speaking, on the female side, instead of having maybe 26, 27 roster, my experience was if we could manage 23, it's a less physical game, so you have, I'm not sure if you have fewer injuries, but it's trickier on the female side, and generally the rosters would be a little bit smaller.
I wanted to relate a story. Scott Rivet won the National Female Championship. And during COVID, players got to play an extra year. I watched them play in the playoffs. And during a warm-up, they had 10 players on the bench, not dressed. They were in civvy clothing that weren't playing in the game. And Scott, he might have won the Nationals that year, but because of COVID, they canceled the tournament. He won his first game. And his proudest achievement was, of the 33 or 4 student athletes he had, not one girl quit. And so that, I think, his ability to manage. Now with females, I don't know, it's a different kettle of fish, but that idea of keeping everybody happy, motivated. You talk about thumbs up, thumbs down, and that's the art of coaching. And how you manage your bench, how you allocate ice time, and players just want to play. And Mark, in the AAA Midget League and Bantam AAA, the best players sometimes stay out too long. And when I watched the final between the Royals and the Flames in the playoffs, double overtime, and in the third period, the top 2 lines played 80% of the time to the point of exhaustion. So the ability to manage the bench to build your team is better handled in pro hockey than it is in minor hockey, because in Adam U11, they'll double shift their best players all game and then load up in the last 10 minutes, and they're creating a monster. And they think winning is what you're there for first, not development. So, Mark, go ahead.
Well, just in regards to that, well, I mentored the U17, U18, AAA teams with the Northwest, and that was a topic of conversation. And I had other guys mentoring the U13, U15, and that's the biggest thing we've talked about. The biggest need to help minor hockey coaches, because the whole idea was to start a program where we train coaches to not have to hire the skills coaches, the skating coaches, is help the minor hockey coaches do it better. But the most time we spend with minor hockey coaches is on behavior of players, discipline of players, ice time allotment for the coaches. The minor hockey coaches have a real hard time with those things. It's really difficult. But I even think at the junior level, I look at my son who played in Moose Jaw this year. You talk about loading up. They even told all their players, we're going to play our top 6 forwards, our top 4D. The rest of you guys will get in when we can. And they lost to Winnipeg, who played 4 lines, 6D, who just played faster and more pace throughout every game. And they just couldn't get their head wrapped around it, being able to do that. But I find coaches in junior minor hockey now have a really hard time holding guys accountable, having proper behavior, getting everybody involved, using everybody. That's the biggest thing we deal with mentors is the behavior of athletes, the discipline of athletes, the accountability, but also then how they utilize their bench and how it's counterproductive to everything they do when they just short shift and support the kids that don't have those habits and details, right?
Yeah. I'm really sorry Kerry Bracco never got on because he's a master at creating a team that succeeds using all players.
Yeah.
Now, his rotation of lines with 11 players is brilliant. A little complicated for me, but with the odd number of 11 forwards, I like first period, 3 rights, second, 3 lefties, center iceman, third period, 3 center icemen. It balances the ice time. But everybody feels part of it. Everybody plays the power play and penalty kill the first half of the season. And eventually they earn their roles and you see where they fit in. Now, the AAA Royals this year, from the get-go, named the top 2 lines as the skill lines. And then the second line was sort of half energy, half skill. The third line was just the energy line from the get-go. So they didn't let those players develop and morph into roles that they didn't let them develop. You don't know how good they're going to be or could be if they don't play. And when I watched in the playoffs, they could have won it all in double overtime, but both teams cheated by overplaying, doing what they did in Moose Jaw at that stage of the game. And the art of coaching is managing the bench. And I think Seattle Kraken right now is aiming at third and fourth lines, getting 10 minutes of ice time each. And that's pretty darn good. 10 to 12 is at that level. But I know historically over the years in the NHL playoffs, the last 4 teams, the minutes of ice are very balanced, and you get productivity from your third and fourth line players, some key goals being scored. So I just wanted to relate that because shortening the bench is a very poor excuse for coaching. Manage the bench is an art for development and building a team. So we've talked about that just about every session because I beat my head against the wall over it for years. But Rick Puttock, go ahead.
Sorry, Rick. I just got to jump off here in about 2 minutes. So.
Okay, won't take it long, Mark, but you'll remember the organization I was with when we crossed paths. They weren't considered to be a high-powered or high-expectation group at the time, but we experienced 2 max semifinals, and both overtime goals were scored by what would be our third and or fourth lines, and that was part and parcel of how we functioned. And we give those kids the opportunity, and they showed up. So it doesn't necessarily equate. You can't win if you don't shorten your bench.
Checkers are helping making a go with the Loafs in Toronto these days too.
Yeah. Mark, before you go, I want to compliment you because when I watched you succeed like you did, and I watched your lines play roles, you're exactly right. The energy level of all your lines, the intensity and speed and pace with which they played was better than the teams you played against. And I couldn't tell anybody not playing well, but everybody played their roles, whatever they were, and they felt part of it. So congratulations on a great effort, how you managed the bench. I talked to you about the timeout, and I was wondering what you said because it certainly had an impact on that final game. And we talked about the fickle nature of the last 2 goals in the championship game. Was it a deliberate pass off the end boards? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
But the play of the winning face-off goal, where I believe the players created that situation on their own, to result in the winning goal was brilliant. That's an art of coaching. You let it happen. The players feel confident in themselves. So well done, and join us anytime, Mark. Don't just wait for this. And we usually have a couple of the ladies on that coach at a high level. Sammy Jo Small and comes on, and to have conversations at this level, we talk about the women's national team and the under 18 national team. So it's going to help every single one of us. So all the best in your year, Mark. And Mike, thanks for joining. Don't be afraid to come on again. And
No, I'll be on next week. Thanks to everybody. And just to Mark, I mean, you guys had a hell of a run. Great on you. I still think I was obviously following you guys the whole year. And I know you were the best team in the nation. That one and done kind of format in the final tournament, it's a little unfair, you know, the best teams, even if it's best of three. I truly believe you guys come through, but yeah, good on you. That's a hell of a season.
Yeah, no, it was enjoyable for sure. It was unbelievable group to coach. They were coachable. They were engaged. They wanted to get better. It was just, it was. And I think a friend of mine said, who's a fellow coach, he goes, "How's the dressing room?" I said, "The guys are awesome." He goes, "You don't win without a great room." And our guys truly loved each other. They played hard and they wanted to do well for the group. But maybe Mike will, now that you're home, we'll go grab a coffee or a beer and we'll catch up.
Anytime. Yeah, look
All
forward
right.
to it. Guys, thanks so much.
Thanks,
Have a
guys.
great day.
before you head out next week, I think it's the 4th. You'd be very interested in this. The guest is going to be Matt Holmberg. He's a lawyer who coached female hockey. He actually left a thriving legal practice, and he's become the athletic director at Queen's University. But he's done a Skype call. If you go on the site that I produce the videos on and subscribe free and type in Queen's University, Matt Holmberg, he talked about being a lawyer and the benefits of that in coaching. That's something valuable to listen to, given the fact that I think we might still have a couple of lawyers coaching in the playoffs.
Yeah, let's get John Cooper on too.
Yeah.
He's got nothing to do.
He could be available sooner than later.
He may be available, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, Matt's going to come on, and I'm sure any kind of questions about his decision to become an AD now and the role and impact he can have as an AD on sports and what it can do for young people. And I think you remember, Mark, you're working with student athletes. Mike, you're working with athletes that want to win, but it's a little bit more of a business than being a student athlete.